Hey guys, tonight we step into a place where the air is thin enough to make your lungs file a complaint, yet somehow you're expected to walk, breathe, and apparently help keep a pot of soup warm. You're arriving at dawn on a sacred Andean ridge, high above where your common sense says humans should reasonably exist. The sky is a quiet bowl of pale gold, stretched over mountains that look like they've been folded by a giant who never learned proper origami. You can already feel the wind test your balance. One of those playful early morning shoves that reminds you, very politely, that you probably wouldn't survive this environment without someone far more competent watching you. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're awake enough, drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's listening from across the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle forward, boots scraping against stones still cold from the night. The Inca cooks are already awake, of course they are, moving with the slow, deliberate rhythm of people who've spent generations making this mountaintop their kitchen. One of them waves you over with a ladle carved from shashikoma wood, its handle polished by time and many, many tired hands. A faint simmering sound drifts through the air, though you can't quite tell where it's coming from. It's like the mountain has a heartbeat and you've accidentally stepped inside its chest. Turns out it's just the soup starting to wake up in a clay pot half sunk into a ring of stones. The cooks call this dawn moment the pot's first breath, and whether that's poetic or completely literal is unclear. Historians still argue whether the Inca genuinely believed their cookware had personalities or if it was just a charming way to make apprentices behave. A mainstream fact slips in with the wind. Inca relay runners, chasquis, actually did take meals prepared at high-altitude stations like this. The empire's roads worked like a living telegraph, and these mountaintop kitchens kept the runners fueled. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some cooks insisted that the first ladle of soup each morning had to be offered to the rising sun, a kind of celestial quality control check. You watch them pour a spoonful onto a warmed stone. The sun is barely up, yet somehow you feel judged. The ridge itself is a marvel. Terraces cling to the slope like stubborn fingernails, catching every shard of sunlight. Below you, clouds drift lazily past as if they overslept and are embarrassed to be seen. The cooks don't mind. They've worked above clouds for so long that weather feels like a colleague, sometimes cooperative, sometimes dramatic, always unavoidable. A cook nudges you toward the pot with a grin that suggests you're about to be entrusted with something important. What they actually want you to do is hold a windbreak panel made from alpaca hide while they adjust the fire pit stones. It's not glamorous, but hey, you're contributing. And yes, the wind immediately tries to yank the panel out of your hands, the way a cat confidently tries to steal a slice of pizza. You glance east. The sun finally spills a full beam across the ridge, lighting the soup steam like a tiny private rainbow. Up here, even the broth seems to shimmer. The day's work hasn't really begun, but the ridge is awake, the cooks are humming, and you've already learned the first rule of mountaintop soup keeping. The wind always gets a vote. You keep that alpaca hide wind panel steady, though the wind keeps treating it like a toy it absolutely deserves to steal. The cooks shuffle around you, tightening the stone ring around the fire like seasoned stagehands preparing for a show that only the mountains ever get tickets to. Up here, fires behave like moody celebrities, unpredictable, difficult to control, and requiring constant attention from people with far more patience than fame. The broth inside the pot trembles with each gust. The cooks act like this is totally normal, because for them, it is. Pot fires above the clouds are tricky things. Even a mild breeze can whisk heat away, as if the air is whispering, "Not on my watch." But the Inca had solutions long before anyone wrote a manual. One cook, an older man with laugh lines deeper than some riverbeds, drops to one knee and adjusts the firewood with a tool that looks suspiciously like a fancy tent peg. A mainstream fact for you: the Inca used dried llama dung as fuel at high altitudes because actual firewood was rarer than polite YouTube comment sections. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some cooks swore that the best burning pieces came from llamas that had been fed a specific mix of herbs. You're not sure if that's science, superstition, or just one cook subtly accusing another cook's llama of having a bland diet. The pot shivers again. A younger cook taps the side lightly with a stone spoon. You raise your eyebrow. They shrug, as if to say, encouragement helps. Historians still argue whether these taps were part of a kitchen ritual, a practical heat test, or just a traditional pastime invented by bored apprentices waiting for the soup to reduce. You crouch beside the pot, feeling the heat wobble in the air, thin but persistent, like a candle refusing to be bullied. The wind rushes past your ear, a sharp little whistle that feels way too personal, as if it's giving you a performance review you didn't ask for. Pot fires need personalities, one cook tells you. If they think you're ignoring them, they sulk. He's saying this completely seriously, which somehow makes it funnier and more convincing at the same time. Another cook smirks, stirring the broth in lazy circles as if it's a sleepy pet that might doze off mid-simmer. You shift your stance, trying not to slide toward the cliff's edge. The ridge narrows here, giving the fire pit just enough room to exist without falling into the sky. Below you, clouds drift so slowly they resemble spilled milk. And above you, the sun clears the spine of a distant peak. Everything feels simultaneously fragile and unbreakable, like the mountain is indulging you only because the cooks vouched for you. A sudden gust slams into your side. The fire bends sideways, flickering wildly, and you almost lose your grip on the panel. The cook's move is one, 3 hands shielding the pot, one adjusting the stones, another lowering a flat rock lid for a moment to trap the heat. It's like watching a pit crew, but for soup. When the wind eases, the fire perks back up, grateful for the attention. The older cook pats your shoulder in a "good job not letting us all down" kind of way. You pretend you totally had everything under control. Then, a warm ladle of broth is offered to you. It tastes like sunlight filtered through herbs and determination. You swallow, exhale, and realize you're starting to understand the rhythm of this mountaintop kitchen. The wind pushes, the fire fights back, and somehow the soup always wins. The wind settles into a calmer mood, as calm as a mountaintop breeze can be, giving you a brief moment to stretch your fingers and pretend you're acclimated. The cooks take advantage of the pause, moving with that easy coordination of people who spent their whole lives working together in thin air. One gestures for you to follow him toward a pair of low stone walls arranged like a half-open book. These aren't walls, he explains, they're heat traps. You crouch beside him, watching as he drapes thick alpaca fleece cloth over the top, creating a kind of fuzzy, insulated cave for the simmering pot. The cloth is surprisingly heavy, soft as a well-worn sweater, and warm in a way that seems to defy the altitude's enthusiasm for stealing body heat. When he covers the walls completely, the wind hits the outside of the fleece with a pouty rustle, like a toddler denied the chance to poke something fragile. A mainstream fact for you: the Inca were masters of environmental engineering. They built terraces, canals, and storehouses that manipulated temperature and airflow with ridiculous precision. But here's your quirky tidbit. Some cooks believed that alpaca fleece carried the memory of the animal's natural body warmth, and that this remembered heat could coax a pot to stay warm longer. You're not saying you believe it, but the broth does seem to perk up. You lift a corner of the fleece carefully, peeking inside. The air beneath is noticeably warmer, like opening an oven door, but gentler, more personal. The cook taps your wrist and whispers, "Don't let the wind hear it." You nod solemnly. Absolutely, you wouldn't dare. Historians still argue whether these fleece-covered stone alcoves were originally designed for cooking or for drying sacred herbs. The truth is probably both, because up here, multitasking isn't a suggestion, it's survival. Another cook approaches with a bundle of sun-warmed stones wrapped in more fleece. They look like freshly baked bread rolls, except they could absolutely break your teeth. You help arrange them around the pot, sliding each stone into its designated slot like puzzle pieces. The effect is immediate. The simmer steadies, rising in a slow, proud bubble. The pot seems pleased with itself. You can't resist cracking a joke. So the fleece is like, prehistoric thermal jacket? 3 cooks nod. Another mutters, better than anything you buy in Cusco. You're pretty sure he's teasing, but you also suspect he's not wrong. The wind makes another attempt at chaos, swooping low and rattling the fleece. The cooks respond by tightening the stone wall's angle, adjusting it just a few centimeters. You feel ridiculous for being impressed by a small rock shift, but it works. The gust glances off harmlessly, redirected like a lazy punch in a martial arts movie. The young cook hands you a second fleece panel and motions for you to help drape it over the far side. Together you stretch it carefully, tucking the corners with the reverence of someone making a bed